Hi everyone, it's Cindy. Welcome back to Studioloo. Today we're on day 3 of Junk Journal July, and the prompt is negative space. So, right now I'm working on ephemera for tree-themed journals, and as usual, my thought process has delved into all these different directions, and here I sit with this vintage Styles and Stylists book that is, from a salon of the 70s, 80s or something. And why have I gone into this, and what does it have to do with negative space or trees or anything? So what I am planning is to go ahead and find a picture, and I did find one. Also, just look at this masterpiece of hair, just for a moment. And this one. I want to use an image that's relatively, I'd say, like, not too flashy, and I want to use the negative space from it to create something relating to my tree journal. So, let me just get set up here. So what I've done is just added my paints to my palette. I'm just using inexpensive acrylic paints today. This one is a Crafter's acrylic from Deco Art, Burnt Umber Brown. The blue is one of my favorite paints, Delta Cream Coat in Paradise. And these are both Americana Deco Art in Kelly Green and Sour Apple. So I just took a moment, put my paints in here, mainly because I had asked my daughter to go upstairs so I could have a little bit of quiet. And her translation of that request was to get this cardboard box that she's been using as a fort. And she is like painstakingly carrying it up and down the stairs from the office or the living room to my studio here, and spending time in it in both locations. And so I guess she figured that she would be quiet in her box down here, but I know better. I know better. That will not happen. And as much as I love her, I just need a few minutes, as I'm sure many of you can relate. So the first thing I'm going to do is just tear out this image of this lovely gal. And I've got this piece of white paper that I'm going to use just as like a paint underneath kind of paper. Then I forgot to grab another piece of paper. 1 minute. Okay, so now we have this piece of paper and this piece of paper, we're good. Okay, so first I'm just going to glue down my image here. And the reason that I'm doing that is I want to create almost like a tag shape. So I've got some room to work up above this head. Alright, so now we're going to identify the negative space so that I can more easily work with it. Oh, this is the pen that doesn't like me anymore. It's no longer working. And I don't know why I didn't throw it away. I think I have a hard time throwing away Micron pens because they're so weird, and that like sometimes they stop working and then they come back to life. So I don't really know. I don't trust them, I guess. Okay, so let's just go with this black line around the negative space. And this is just going to give me a guide to kind of work with. It's a little more defined. Okay. Alright, so now what I want to do is create a bit of like a foresty scene behind her. And it's not going to be like hyper realistic or anything. It's just going to be kind of, well, you'll see. Let's just start to layer some paint. So I'm going to start just with some blue. And I want it to kind of be a little like mixed media-ish. So we'll just kind of go around. Okay, so the paint is all dry now. I just got that blue base layer down. So what I'd like to do now is go ahead and trim this piece of ephemera into the shape that I'm going to want it as almost as a final piece. Not quite all the way there, mostly, just so that I understand what the frame of my own painting needs to go inside, because I don't want to be putting a bunch of details like over the edge of what I'm going to end up using as a final piece. All right, so there we go. Then I'm going to come in and I'm going to do the branches of the trees that I want behind her as kind of the basis to go forward. So I'm going to add a little bit of thicker brown at the bottom. I'm just going to try to decide like how many trees I want and what I want them to kind of be shaped like. I think I'll have maybe some small branches coming out here at the bottom. So this will be like a more spindly kind of tree. And over here, I think, start with a line here. Okay. Maybe we'll add a little more width to this one. Making sure I cover up all that blue base. And then over here, I find it a lot easier to just kind of turn my piece. I know for some people that is like a stressful thing to do when you're trying to paint any kind of an object because it takes your whole perspective away. I only do it when I'm trying to just start my shape, and then I go back to the regular position of, you know, doing a painting so that I can look at it. Okay. This is a little bit of slow kind of work here. We'll see how long this seems to take, and if it's going to take a long time, I will probably speed things up. But if not, I'll just kind of share with you, because I think a lot of people seem to quite enjoy getting like the process of, you know, I think the overall environment when people are making, it's interesting to see. Some spindly branches on here, and then I'm just going to come down and I'm going to add a little more of my brown here, make this a little more solid, and then just clean this area around her nose up a bit. You can have a little branch coming out that side. Okay. Okay, then I got to carry the big tree back up here. And try to decide what shape I need that tree to have. So I just kind of start with like some lighter outlines. And then I'll come back and I'll fill that in later. Okay, so now we'll fill this in. And you can obviously use more than one shade of brown to add depth. I can hear my son outside my window. So if you hear him, he's outside. Okay. Now we'll come into this thicker branch here. I'll add another thicker branch. There we go. And then we will add more spindly. Sorry, my phone is activating our motion sensor. Okay. Then we need to come over here, and we've got this smaller tree here that was one that I said would be a little more thin and spindly. Kind of get a general shape for how I want it to go. I'm thinking about the overall shape of something like a cedar and how it has lots of little connected branches inside of it. And some are thick and some are very thin. You get like these really tiny ones. And again, just, don't stress if you're doing something like this. Just have your own Bob Ross happy little tree kind of moment. Don't stress. Just, it doesn't have to be anything pretentious. Not to say that, what we're doing isn't artistically valuable, because it is. That's the whole thing is, not everybody paints the same way. Not everybody strives for hyper realism. I think if we were doing that, we'd be photographers, not painters. Oops. Okay. So just about got all these trees and branches in here. Just going to go over a few the little ones just to darken them up so they don't get lost behind the leaves. Okay. Alright, so that's what I'm going for. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of drying time, I think, and then I will come back and we'll do the next step. Kind of doing a final check, making sure I like how everything looks. Okay, see you in a moment. Okay, so now this is dry and we can move on to creating clusters of leaves that I think will be fun. So go to my smaller brush here, and I've got a couple of greens that I've pulled out. And I'm just going to start with the darker green. And just kind of have fun with it, make little leafy strokes here and there. So to create a leaf, really, it's just, let me see if I can come out in the middle here and just show you. Just one little swoop, two little swoops, just kind of facing each other. And leaves usually grow in, a cluster on the end of a little branch. And some of these branches are still kind of wide, but I'm not like stressing about that. I think that overall it's going to be quite cute. So I'll just do the dark green first. One reason is it makes it a little easier to just manage one color at a time. But secondly, I think also it helps you use the green as like the main color, and then you can do any highlighting and fixing with the light color. So our air quality is still a little unhealthy right now, so even though it's a long weekend here in Canada, I don't think we're going to be really going out a whole lot. We've been going out. We did a big mulberry forage yesterday, and the air was kind of not so great, so we were wearing masks for a bit of it, and we did some indoor stuff. And I'm not a big Canada Day person or anything. I woke up this morning and made a donation to my local Indigenous Friendship Center because I'm a big believer in the reality of history and those sort of things, and making sure I'm supporting the first people here whose land my home is on. So that's what we've been doing. And what else? So yesterday I did do a little bit of thrifting, and that was fun. I got a little thrift haul for this week, so I will share that with you. I think I'm going to see if I can find some fun new people to follow on YouTube for Junk Journal July, see if there's anybody that I don't know about. Thank you to everyone who entered the chance to win my Junk Journal July Day 1 Good Vibes cards. You can still enter that by leaving a comment on that specific video for my first day. I got a lot of nice channels recommended to me, and a few of them I actually didn't know about, so I plan to check some of those out today because I'm always looking for new creatives to follow and support. Just about done with the main leafy shapes here. So typically on the finer small branches, leaves will grow down the whole branch. Usually anywhere that a branch ends is where the leaves are going to grow. Okay, so I feel pretty good about this. You'll see there's more leaves on this more spindly tree, and that's because it's kind of like a different type of tree. It's a little smaller. This larger tree, it's more of the open space of the brown, and I'm happy with that as well, because it's not like the clusters of leaves would grow out of the trunk, right? So, okay, so then I will come in with the green to just kind of add little highlights on the leaves. Little maybe light changes, and maybe it's the back side of the leaf showing. Maybe the wind is blowing and it's kind of twisting the leaf a bit, so we're seeing some of the back sides of the leaf. And then there could even be some teeny little leaves that they have a more tender color because they're not as big as the other leaves. But I think I will probably try to do a bit of work in my backyard today on my ongoing patio project that is taking forever, but it's okay. We do a lot of slow work in our life these days because I think when you intentionally plan for things to take a long time because you're realistic about you know, how busy your life is when you have little kids especially, and that things can get interrupted and you don't get to get done as much as you would have liked, that you're not as disappointed with it when it's kind of like a, you know what you're setting yourself up for. I try to do that as much as possible. Okay, so that's that. Now I'm just going to let this paint dry, and then I'm going to come in and make a few more touches to this. Now that this is dry, we can go ahead and back it. So I'm just going to use glue stick because I'm going to stitch all around this. Go. And I'm just using book page and doing my backing with book page. Let me get rid of this little blue blob. Okay, there we go. Just fold that over because there's some kind of glue stuck to that for sure. Then okay, so let's get rid of all this stuff. And then I'm going to just clip this into a tag now that it's backed. Then this is quite bright still, so I think what I would like to do with it before I stitch it is I just want to hit it with a little bit of coffee spray. So see, this is coffee and alcohol that I keep in a spray bottle, and I'm just going to go over the whole image and just kind of soak it and let it sit for a second. And yeah, that is quite wet. It's by intention that I like to make it a little bit wet. And you can even come in with your Distress ink dauber and add a little bit of like vintage photo or whatever color you might like to just kind of add some, you know, color to the otherwise black and white type image I've got there. And then I'll just come in with these little book pages to bring that extra coffee up and away. Okay, so then I will dry the tag again, just with my heat gun here. And that's not going to add a ton of color, it's just going to tone the black and white paper mostly, but you might, you know, get a little bit of change on the paint. It sort of depends. These are the experimental and fun things that, you know, you can do to see what happens. Okay, so it's mostly dry. So I'll lift that up off of here, get rid of that. And then I just want to go around it with a little bit of Distress ink, vintage photo. And now, you know, the dauber's still a little wet, so I'm going to get a little bit of extra, which again I want because I want to just kind of give this almost like a bit of a sepia frame. I think it kind of goes nicely with the overall image because it is from a vintage book. And then I'll just maybe tone the sky a little bit with this. You can still see it's a blue sky, but I just want a little bit of more of a vintage feel. Okay, now we're done with the inking, and what I think I'll do is I will select a few, maybe one or two leaves from my silk leaves here. I'm trying to decide which one I might like to stitch on here. I sort of feel like the yellow would be really cool. It's completely different, but also, you know, if you wanted to do green, you could do green to keep it all more cohesive. A lot of my leaves are a bit big, but I can cut them down. You can easily turn one leaf into 2 or 3. But I think I want to go with the yellow. I just think I like that bit of color, you know, that stands up from the rest of the piece. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to stitch that on. I may fold this like that so it's not as, it doesn't come down as much. So I will be right back. So this is all stitched around now and I'm happy with it, and I just want to add a little extra something. So I like to play with a lot of old book spine here, and I'm just going to grab a scrap of it, and I grabbed a couple of nice little vintage book word bits, and I like this chosen haunt around the branches. So I'm just going to use some art glitter glue to glue those down on here. Oops, I gotta unclog my little glue bottle here. It would not be a day of creating without having to do that. Are we unclogged? Not quite. Okay. Why? My kingdom for the perfect non-clogged glue bottle at all times. So we will just glue these down. Okay. Chosen haunt around the branches. And then we'll take this whole snip here. There we go. So I think that is a super fun tag. I really liked making it, and yeah, it's a nice way to just use the negative space for something else that's maybe a little more showy than what's happening in the positive space, right? So you could also do something like completely like a silhouette. You could trace something. You could take a leaf from your garden, trace around it, and then fill in the negative space and just have the outline of a leaf. Something like that, where the negative or the positive space is literally empty. There's lots of ways to play with negative space. And so that's it for me for today. I will talk to you again tomorrow. Please subscribe if you haven't, and check the links below to hear and see a little bit more about Junk Journal July. Bye for now.